I've been a night nurse at Blackwood Hospital for 7 years. I've seen people die. I've seen people come back from the edge of death. I've witnessed miracles and tragedies in equal measure. But nothing prepared me for what started happening in Ward C 3 months ago. My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm 39 years old. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, and a job that most people wouldn't want. Night shift at a psychiatric hospital isn't glamorous. It's not like those medical dramas on TV. It's long hours of routine punctuated by moments of genuine crisis. But I'm good at it. I care about my patients. I know their stories, their struggles, their small victories. And I know when something is wrong. It started with Mrs. Eleanor Hutchins in room 304. She'd been with us for 6 months, suffering from early onset Alzheimer's at 62. She still had good days and bad days. Some mornings she'd recognize me, ask about my children by name. Other mornings she'd look at me like I was a stranger. But on the morning of September 3rd, she didn't just fail to recognize me, she didn't recognize anything. I came in for my rounds at midnight. Eleanor was sitting up in bed, staring at her hands like she'd never seen them before. I approached slowly, using the calm voice we're trained to use. "Eleanor, it's Rebecca. How are you feeling tonight?" She looked up at me with absolute terror in her eyes. "Who are you? Where am I? What is this place?" "You're at Blackwood Hospital. You've been here for 6 months. I'm your nurse, Rebecca. We know each other." "No," she shook her head violently. "No, I don't know you. I don't know this place. I don't—" She looked around the room, at the personal photos on her nightstand, the quilts her daughter had brought, the cards from her grandchildren taped to the wall. "I don't know any of this. None of it. It's like everything disappeared." I checked her vitals. Everything was normal. I tried to orient her, remind her of basic facts, her name, her age, her family. She knew her name was Eleanor Hutchins, but everything else? Gone. Not faded or confused like typical Alzheimer's progression, completely erased. When I mentioned her daughter, Patricia, she looked at me blankly. "I don't have a daughter. I don't remember having a daughter." Dr. James Reeves, the attending psychiatrist, came in at my request. He spent an hour with Eleanor, running cognitive tests. When he emerged from her room, he looked troubled. "It's not consistent with Alzheimer's progression," he said. "This is something different. It's like someone took an eraser to specific parts of her memory. Childhood memories are intact. She remembers learning to read, playing in her yard as a child, but everything from about age 25 onward? Gone. Marriage, children, career, all of it." "Is that possible, medically?" I asked. "I've never seen anything like it. I'm ordering a full neurological workup, MRI, blood tests, everything." The tests came back normal. No new lesions, no signs of stroke or tumor. Physically, Eleanor's brain was the same as it had been a week ago, but mentally, 40 years of her life had been erased. I thought it was a one-time medical mystery, the kind of thing that gets written up in journals, doctors shaking their heads saying they've never seen anything like it. Then it happened to Mr. Raymond Foster in room 311. Raymond was 78, suffering from paranoid schizophrenia that had been well managed with medication for decades. He'd been hospitalized after a bad reaction to a new prescription. He was supposed to be discharged in a few days. On September 10th, I found him sitting in his chair, staring at nothing. When I called his name, he didn't respond. I touched his shoulder and he jumped like I'd electrocuted him. "Raymond, are you okay?" He looked at me with the same expression Eleanor had worn. Complete confusion, total disorientation. "I don't know who Raymond is. Is that me? Am I Raymond?" Over the next hour, we discovered that Raymond had lost approximately 50 years of memories. He thought he was 28 years old. He didn't remember his wife, who died 10 years ago, didn't remember his children, his career as an accountant, his decades of treatment for schizophrenia. Gone. All of it. Dr. Reeves was called in again. He examined Raymond, compared his condition to Eleanor's, and I could see the fear starting to form behind his professional facade. 2 patients in a week.
both presenting with identical symptoms, selective memory loss that doesn't follow any known neurological pattern. Could it be the medication? I asked. Something they're both taking? They're on completely different drug regimens, no overlap. He rubbed his face. I'm going to document both cases, submit them to neurology. But Rebecca, if this happens again, what? If this happens to a third patient, we might be dealing with something contagious or environmental, something in the hospital itself.
I didn't want to believe that. Blackwood was my workplace, my second home. The idea that the building itself could be causing this was terrifying. But on September 17th, it happened to a third patient, then a fourth, then a fifth. All in Ward C, all losing decades of memories overnight, waking up thinking they were younger, unaware of huge portions of their lives. Families gone, careers forgotten, entire lifetimes erased. By the end of September, 12 patients had been affected. The hospital administration went into crisis mode. Ward C was quarantined. Environmental testing was done. Air quality, water quality, possible toxins in the building materials. Everything came back normal. The media got wind of it. Mystery illness at Blackwood Hospital. Concerned families started pulling their loved ones out. The hospital was facing a public relations nightmare. And I was working night shift in Ward C, watching patients lose their lives piece by piece, with no idea what was causing it or how to stop it. That's when I met Dr. Caroline Porter. She showed up on October 1st, sent by the CDC to investigate. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and the kind of intense focus that made you understand she was brilliant. She interviewed every staff member who'd been in Ward C, reviewed every patient file, spent hours analyzing the pattern of memory loss. After 3 days, she called me into an empty conference room. Nurse Martinez, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Okay? Have you noticed anything unusual in Ward C? Anything that doesn't fit normal hospital activity? Strange sounds, unexplained occurrences, anything at all that struck you as odd? I thought about it. There's been a smell for about a month now, faint, like flowers and copper. I reported it to maintenance, but they couldn't find a source. She wrote that down. What else? The temperature. Room 307 is always cold, even when the heating is on full blast. And sometimes, I hesitated. Sometimes what? Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hallway when no one else is there. I assumed it was the building settling, old pipes, you know. Has anyone else reported these things? The other nurses have mentioned the cold, and one of the orderlies said he feels like he's being watched when he's in Ward C alone. Dr. Porter leaned back in her chair. Nurse Martinez, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to hear me out. I'm listening. I don't work for the CDC, not really. I work for a division that investigates anomalous medical phenomena, things that don't fit conventional explanations, unexplained illnesses, impossible recoveries, events that seem to violate known medical science. You're saying this is paranormal? I'm saying this is beyond our current understanding, and I've seen this pattern before, twice. Once in a nursing home in Oregon in 1998, once in a rehabilitation center in Vermont in 2007. Both times, patients lost memories in exactly this way, selective erasure, no physical cause, no medical explanation. What happened? In Oregon, we lost 14 patients before we figured out what was happening. In Vermont, we caught it earlier, lost 6. She pulled out a file folder and opened it. In both cases, there was an entity, a presence, something that feeds on human memory. I stared at her. You're telling me there's something in this hospital eating people's memories? Not eating, stealing. And yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the patients. You've seen what's happening. Do you have a better explanation? I didn't, but accepting what she was saying meant accepting that reality was stranger and more terrifying than I'd ever imagined. What is it, this thing? We don't know exactly. Some kind of entity that exists partially in our world and partially in something else. It's drawn to places where memories are already damaged. Alzheimer's units, psychiatric wards, places where the barrier between remembering and forgetting is already thin.
Why memories? What does it want with them? We think memories are a form of energy, life force, identity. Whatever it is, this entity consumes them, grows stronger, and once it's established in a location, it's very difficult to remove. How do we stop it? She looked at me seriously. That's the problem. In Oregon, we tried everything: exorcisms, cleansing rituals, electromagnetic disruption. Nothing worked. The entity only left when it had consumed enough, when there was nothing left for it to feed on. So you're saying we just have to wait until it's done? No, I'm saying we need to find it, locate its anchor point. Every entity like this has a physical anchor, something that ties it to our reality, an object, a location, something. If we can find that and destroy it, we might be able to break its hold on Ward C. How do we find it? We start by mapping the occurrences, which rooms have been affected, which patients, looking for the center point where the entity is strongest. We spent the next 3 days doing exactly that, plotting every case on a floor plan of Ward C, looking for patterns, and we found one. All 12 patients who'd lost memories were in rooms that shared a wall with room 307, the room that was always cold, the room where I'd felt most uneasy during my rounds. Room 307 was currently empty. It had been empty for 2 weeks, ever since its previous occupant, an elderly man named Herbert Moss, had been discharged. Dr. Porter and I went to the room at 3 a.m. when the ward was quiet. She brought equipment I'd never seen before, EMF detectors, thermal cameras, devices that measured things I didn't understand. The moment we stepped into the room, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. The EMF detector started screaming, needle pinned to the maximum reading. "It's here," Dr. Porter said quietly. "This is the anchor point." The room looked normal. Hospital bed, side table, chair, small bathroom, nothing unusual, except the smell. That flour and copper smell I'd been noticing for weeks. It was overpowering in here. "We need to find the source," Dr. Porter said. She started methodically checking everything, behind the bed, inside the closet, under the sink. I checked the bathroom, opened the medicine cabinet, nothing. Then I noticed something odd about the wall. There was a small section, maybe 2 feet square, where the paint looked different, newer. Someone had patched and repainted recently. "Dr. Porter, look at this." She came over, examined the wall, pulled out a pocket knife and scraped at the paint. It came away easily, too easily, revealing plaster underneath. The plaster was soft, fresh. She dug into it with the knife. Something was inside the wall. She pulled away chunks of plaster until she revealed it, a small wooden box, maybe 6 inches square, embedded in the wall cavity. The EMF detector went insane. The temperature dropped even further. I could feel something in the room with us, a presence, angry, aware. Dr. Porter carefully extracted the box. It was old, Victorian era by the look of it, carved wood with tarnished metal hinges. "Don't open it here," I said. "Whatever's in there." "I know." She wrapped the box in a special cloth she'd brought, some kind of silver-threaded material. "We need to get this out of the hospital, away from the patients." We left room 307. The moment we stepped into the hallway, the presence followed us. I could feel it, like something vast and cold walking right behind us, invisible but undeniably there. We made it to the parking lot. Dr. Porter put the container in a special space in her car. The moment the container closed, I felt the presence disappear, snap away like a cut rope. "It's contained.
"For now," Dr. Porter said. "What's in the box?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's the anchor, the thing that's been allowing the entity to manifest in Ward C." We drove to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Dr. Porter had prepared a space there, a circle drawn in salt and ash, symbols I didn't recognize painted on the concrete floor. She placed the container in the center of the circle and opened it. The box was inside, looking innocent, harmless. She put on thick gloves and carefully opened the lid. Inside was a collection of objects, old photographs, a lock of hair, a pocket watch, a wedding ring, a pressed flower, personal items, mementos, the kind of things people save to remember important moments. "Memory anchors," Dr. Porter said quietly. "Physical representations of memories. Someone created this, built it deliberately, a trap for the entity." "Who? Why?" "Herbert Moss." She picked up one of the photographs, a young man in a World War II uniform. The face was vaguely familiar. This is him, 70 years ago. "The patient who was in room 307? The one who was discharged 2 weeks ago?" "He wasn't discharged. He died. Natural causes, the paperwork says, but I don't think his death was natural at all." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo she'd taken of Herbert Moss's medical records. He'd been at Blackwood for 3 years, admitted with advanced dementia, but in his file there were notes from 40 years ago, brief psychiatric treatment in 1982, diagnosed with acute trauma response.
Dr. Porter had dug deeper, found newspaper articles from 1982. Herbert Moss had been found wandering the streets, confused and disoriented. He claimed something had stolen his memories, decades of his life gone. He'd been institutionalized briefly, then released when doctors couldn't find anything physically wrong with him. He was a victim, Dr. Porter said. In Oregon, in 1998, he was one of the patients who lost their memories, and somehow he survived, lived with the holes in his mind for decades, but he never forgot what had been done to him. He never forgot the entity. So he created this to trap it? To lure it, to bind it. Memory anchors connected to trauma are like a beacon to these entities, and Herbert spent the last 3 years of his life in Ward C, slowly, methodically creating the perfect trap, collecting objects, channeling his own pain and loss into them, turning himself into bait. But it didn't work. The entity is still feeding. Because Herbert died before he could complete the binding, the entity is trapped, partially, but it's still strong enough to manifest, to steal memories from patients near its anchor point. So what do we do? Dr. Porter pulled out a small leather journal from her bag. This belonged to Herbert. I found it in his belongings after he died. Its instructions, what he planned to do, how to complete the binding and banish the entity. She opened the journal. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Pages and pages of research, occult symbols, rituals, a lifetime of preparation distilled into a desperate plan. He was going to burn the box, she said, with specific components, sage, salt, silver shavings, and something personal from each victim, something to call their memories back. We don't have anything personal from the victims. We do. They're medical bracelets. Every patient at Blackwood wears one, unique identifier. They've worn them for months, in constant contact with their skin. That's personal enough. You want to steal 12 medical bracelets? I want to save 12 people from living the rest of their lives without knowing who they are. She had a point. We drove back to Blackwood. It was 5 a.m. now. Shift change would happen at 7. We had 2 hours. I used my access to enter Ward C, went room by room, carefully removed the medical bracelet from each affected patient, replacing it with an identical one from the supply closet. They'd never know the difference. Eleanor Hutchins stirred when I unclasped her bracelet, looked at me with those empty eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Someone trying to help," I said. By 6:30 a.m., I had all 12 bracelets, met Dr. Porter back at the warehouse. She'd prepared everything else,
The circle was ready, components laid out according to Herbert's instructions. She placed the box in the center, arranged the 12 bracelets around it, added sage, salt, and silver shavings in specific patterns. Then she lit a lighter. Once we start this, there's no stopping. Whatever happens, we see it through. What could happen? Best case, the entity is banished, the anchor is destroyed, the patient's memories return gradually over the next few weeks. Worst case, the entity manifests fully, tries to protect its anchor, and we have to fight it without any real weapons or understanding of what we're dealing with. Great, let's do it. She lit the sage. It caught immediately, smoke rising in a thin column. She began reading from Herbert's journal, words in a language I didn't recognize, Latin maybe, or something older. The temperature dropped. My breath came out in clouds. The lights in the warehouse flickered. The smoke from the sage wasn't rising naturally anymore. It was moving, flowing toward the box like it was being pulled. Dr. Porter kept reading, her voice steady, strong. The box began to vibrate, rattling against the concrete. The medical bracelets lifted into the air, hovering 6 inches off the ground.
And then I saw it, the entity. It wasn't a ghost or a demon or anything I could easily describe. It was a presence, a distortion in the air, like heat waves but cold. A shape that hurt to look at directly. It towered over us, maybe 8 feet tall, impossibly thin, with too many angles that didn't make sense in 3-dimensional space. And it was angry. The temperature dropped even further. Ice formed on the windows. The EMF detector shattered, unable to handle whatever it was measuring. Dr. Porter's voice grew louder. She was shouting now. The words seemed to burn the air as she spoke them. The entity lunged toward her. I grabbed a handful of salt and threw it. The granules seemed to solidify mid-air, forming a barrier. The entity recoiled, shrieking. The sound wasn't audible exactly, but I felt it in my bones, in my teeth. Dr. Porter touched the lighter to the box. It caught immediately. Flames rose, blue and white, burning hotter than normal fire should. The medical bracelets burst into flame, the photographs, the hair, the mementos, all of it burning. The entity screamed again. It was being pulled into the flames, fighting, trying to escape, but the binding was too strong. Herbert had spent 3 years preparing this trap, and it was working. I watched as the entity was drawn down into the burning box. It tried to grab onto our reality, to anchor itself to something, but there was nothing left. Its anchor was being destroyed. With a final soundless shriek, it vanished into the flames. The box burned until there was nothing left but ash. The temperature returned to normal. The lights stopped flickering. The oppressive presence I'd been feeling for weeks was gone. Dr. Porter sat down heavily on the concrete floor. It's done. It's over. The patients? Will they recover? I think so. The memories aren't destroyed, just displaced. With the entity gone, there's nothing preventing them from returning.
She was right. Over the next 3 weeks, every patient who'd lost memories began to recover. Slowly at first. Flashes, fragments, then larger pieces. Eleanor recognized her daughter. Raymond remembered his wife. One by one, the stolen years came back. Not perfectly. There were gaps, fuzzy areas, but the core memories, the important ones, the ones that made them who they were, those returned. By the end of November, Ward C was normal again. The cold spot in room 307 was gone, the strange smell disappeared, the feeling of being watched evaporated. Dr. Porter left to handle her report. She thanked me for my help, said I'd been braver than most people would have been. I went back to my regular shifts, night nurse, checking vitals, administering medication, the routine I'd done for 7 years. But I couldn't forget what I'd seen, what I'd learned, that there are things in the world that science can't explain.
entities that exist in the spaces between understanding, creatures that feed on what makes us human. I think about Herbert Moss sometimes, the years he spent planning, researching, preparing his trap, knowing he probably wouldn't live to see it completed, leaving his journal behind like a message in a bottle, hoping someone would find it and finish what he'd started. He saved 12 people, people he'd never met, people who would never know what he'd done for them.
That's heroism. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't get medals or recognition. The kind that matters most. I kept Herbert's journal. Dr. Porter let me, said I'd earned it. I read it sometimes, his notes, his research, his determination to stop the thing that had destroyed his own life from destroying others. There's an entry near the end that stays with me. I don't remember my children's faces. I don't remember my wife's voice. I don't remember 50 years of my life, but I remember the entity. I remember what it did to me, and I will make sure it never does it to anyone else. That memory, that purpose is enough. It has to be enough. My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm 39 years old. I'm a night nurse at Blackwood Hospital. And 3 months ago, I helped destroy something that shouldn't exist. But I know now that it wasn't alone. Dr. Porter told me there are others, more entities, more places where they feed, more people losing pieces of themselves to things they can't see or understand. She gave me her number, said if I ever noticed anything unusual again, anything that didn't make sense, I should call her immediately. I hope I never have to, but I keep her number in my phone, just in case. Because I've seen what's out there, what exists in the shadows between science and superstition, between the known and the impossible. And I know that someone has to stand against it. Someone has to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Someone has to remember so that others don't have to forget. That's what Herbert Moss did. And if the time comes, it's what I'll do too. Because memory is what makes us human. Our experiences, our stories, our connections to the people we love. And some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible, even when the enemy can't be seen, even when all you have is courage and a dead man's journal and the desperate hope that good can triumph over something that exists beyond good and evil. That hope has to be enough. It has to be, because the alternative is unthinkable. The alternative is forgetting, and forgetting means losing ourselves, losing everything. I won't let that happen, not on my watch, not ever again.